This conference will now be recorded.
Okay, so today we are starting with the Salesforce development training. The prerequisite is it's not like directly only Salesforce development you want to learn and get the job. So for Salesforce, it is not like that. So as a Salesforce developer, we should at least know the basics of the Salesforce administration. Okay, so if some of you, if you are joining directly for the development, you should make sure that you should also understand the admin at least later point of time, or parallelly you need to understand the basics of the Salesforce admin. Okay, so that's the prerequisite. So without knowing that, some concepts, maybe initial 1 week is fine. So later, while dealing with the data model, right, so Salesforce objects, relationships, at least those concepts you should know to understand. Okay, just keep that in mind. So don't think that directly you can learn development without knowing the Salesforce administration. Okay, so now let's understand what exactly at high level what we are going to discuss as part of the development. Okay, so first I'll give high level overview. So why we need to do the development? So already as part of the administration with point and click, the configuration, we discussed how we can achieve the requirements. So beyond that, there might be some requirements. So we need to do even more automation, which is not possible with the configuration tools provided by Salesforce. So that time we need to go with this development. So let me keep some diagram here to understand the high level overview, what exactly we do, right? So we are going to work for Salesforce, right? Our job is as a Salesforce administrator, as a developer, we need to develop the features as per the client requirements, either through configuration or the development. So mainly when we work with Salesforce, right? Salesforce looks like this, right? So maybe I'm opening one of the application, let's say sales application. So this is the application. So when any client, when they register with Salesforce, they have the standard applications, they have the standard UI, right? The web page, right? Now whatever we are seeing is the user interface, right? So these pages by default provided by Salesforce, right? So if you, when you deal with Salesforce, let me add one diagram here. So let's say this entire thing is Salesforce. Okay, so now this is Salesforce, right? When we work with Salesforce, it will be having the different layers. Okay, so the first thing what we see on the web page, right? When you click on this, so you are seeing some information here, right? So whatever we are seeing the web page, this is the web page. So that is UI, right? So let me add that one. We have user interface. This is like, right, UI. So we have this user interface. And when you do something here, right? Let's say I click on new, right? In the background, some logic will execute, some business logic will execute, right? Maybe if I fill this form and save, some business logic will execute. That business logic will try to interact with the Salesforce database, right? It will try to read the data from database, or it will try to save the data into database. So like that, right? So when you interact with the UI, in the background, there is a layer, right, where the logic, some of the business logic will be executed, right? So here, so I'll say business logic, some logic will execute, right? So after this logic, right, this here some validations, and the main aim of this logic is maybe to stop whatever the data we are trying to enter from the UI to save into database, or it will allow to save the data into database if everything is correct, or it will get the data from Salesforce and it will allow to show the data on the UI, right? All that control will happen here. So it needs to interact with the database, right? Where our data, whatever the data we deal, all that stores in that database, right? Let's say this is a database. This is what all these three layers on day to day, it will, right? So it will flow the data. Okay, so when I click on this, right, when I click on this one, let's say maybe I'm clicking on this one, you are seeing all this data, right? All this data is there in Salesforce database, right? Internally, some logic execute, it will bring the data, and it will return to UI, and on UI the data will be displayed. In the same way, when you click on new, we enter data and save. This logic will execute. If everything is correct, it will save the data into database. So that is what will happen, right? So the ultimate goal is saving the data and reading the data, right? But the way how we see the data, how we save the data, for that the UI, right? So for the maybe validations, or to automatically calculate something, and right, the calculated data to save, this business logic layer will be useful. Okay, as part of the admin, right? So as part of the admin, so for UI, so all these are like when you create the tab for the object, you are seeing this standard page from Salesforce. When you open one of the record, this is also one of the standard page from Salesforce. If you want to modify this page, you can click on edit page and modify through app builder, right? Maybe if you want to modify the fields of this, we have a concept called page layout. Or when you click on new, if you want to show some different types of record types and all those things, we have record types concept, right? So with the configurable options, whatever is possible, we already discussed as part of the administration, right? So maybe app builder, page layouts, record types, dynamic forms, or whatever is possible. Already we discussed as part of the administration. And the business logic in the background, we discussed about validation rules, we discussed about flow builder, process builder, right? So many other automation tools we discussed, right? Those will fall under this category, right? And also finally, the data saves in the database. Okay, database is so to hold the data, right? So now, so this is nothing but right. So MVC architecture, right? So MVC means, so here this we call as view, right? View means what we see on the UI, that is. Controller means the business logic, so that kind of layer. So, and the database is a model. Okay, so people say MVC architecture. This is what, these are the layers. So now the reason why we need to go with the development. Okay, so maybe one of the clients, they have a requirement which is not offered by Salesforce. Maybe the screens, they want to introduce one of the button and launch a custom screen, right? So some custom UI they want, they might be having some requirements like that. Already, if you see, we have screen flow as part of the administration. Most of the requirements you can achieve with the screen flow, but beyond that, there are some limitations. So when we see those limitations, and if you see it's not possible with the screen flow and the configurable option, we need to end up with developing our own UI, right? So we need to develop our own UI, right? So to develop that UI, right, the web pages. So what are the technologies we use? Okay, so the common UI development technologies, see HTML, right? So CSS means to apply the styles for the web page, and JavaScript, right? To do some client-side validations, means within the browser some logic it execute and do something. So this is a traditional way of doing the web page development. So we also use these things, but no need to know 100% in-depth concepts of HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. All we need to know the basics. Okay, so for sure we use these things, but to simplify so many things, so Salesforce, they have their own framework where, so we can develop the web page which match with the Salesforce look and feel, and the Salesforce how they are showing the standard components. Okay, so for that, so for a long time there is a framework called Visual Force. Okay, so similar to HTML, Visual Force is one of the markup languages. So we use it to develop the web pages using Visual Force. This Visual Force technology is similar to Salesforce Classic, right, as part of the admin. So we also know that we have Salesforce Classic, the old look and feel. Before the year 2015, it used to be like this, the Salesforce. So how these screens looks, right? So the internal framework for these screens, so what Salesforce used. So to match with that, this Visual Force is the one which we do the development. Okay, but nowadays everything is Lightning, right? If you see, 90% most of the clients, they are using Lightning experience, right? So to match with that, the Lightning, the way how we see the screens, the internal framework, what Salesforce used for this. So for that, so Salesforce, they have ARA components. So one of the framework for the UI development, right? So previously, right now also, so Lightning components or ARA components, both are same. Okay, these Lightning components is based on a open source framework called ARA. Okay, so nowadays people say ARA or Lightning components means this one. Okay, so in 2015, so they introduced this one, right? So later, due to some other modern factors, modern browser default compatibility of the UI, Salesforce, they came up with LWC. LWC means so Lightning Web Components. So Lightning Web Components, right? So this is introduced in 2019, which is the modern framework to do the UI development. Okay, so when we say doing the development using Salesforce platform, so for UI, this is what we do. Okay, so I mean internally for Visualforce, there are many concepts. For HARA, there are many topics. LWC, there are many topics. So we focus more on LWC because that is latest. The other things became outdated nowadays, right? So that's what we discuss. And the next thing is the business logic, right? Business logic means the complex logic execute here. So for this, we use one of the programming language called Apex. Okay, so Apex is one of the programming language. Maybe on day to day we know about Java, .NET, Python, like that. So Apex is one of the programming language specific to Salesforce. It looks similar to Java, core Java. I'm not expecting anyone to know some language like Java or something already. So as part of this training, we understand this Apex programming language from the basics. From the basics, we understand and proceed with all the in-depth concepts. So as part of this training. Okay. So when I say Apex, under this Apex, again, there are many topics, right? So there are like Apex classes, Apex trigger, test class. There are many things. Okay, so Apex trigger, test class, batch Apex. There are many other types. Okay, I'm not listing all those things here. Okay, schedulable class and many things. You can see the syllabus for all in detail topics. Okay, so these are the different things. So what we deal. So as part of the Apex only, there is a concept called integration. We'll say API development. So that also as part of the Apex. Okay, so what is that integration? So if you want to understand, the regular way of showing the data on Salesforce UI, or if you fill some form and while saving, all the interaction will go from UI to business logic to database, right? So that is the traditional way, right? So when you do something here, it will reach here. So from there, so it will reach here, right? So now what will happen? This entire thing is Salesforce, right? Um, maybe client might have some other platform, right? Maybe let me try to. Okay, so maybe try to copy paste everything. Trying to copy this everything because exactly the same way I want. Okay, let's say there is a other technology like SAP, right? So in SAP also maybe all these things. I'm trying to see if I'm okay. Anyway, leave it. So what I'm trying to explain. So this also they might have some UI. They also have some UI. They also have some business logic to execute. They also have some database. They have a database and they also have this business logic and all these things. Okay, so sometimes what will happen, same client, whatever we work. So for example, assume that we are working for a client called Coca-Cola. Coca-Cola company, they are using Salesforce CRM, right? So for Salesforce CRM, they use the Salesforce platform. For some other business module, maybe they have ERP and some other business module, they are using SAP. So now what they want from Salesforce UI, when one of the Coca-Cola company user, when they log into Salesforce and they try to see this web page. So what they ask, they want to get some data from this SAP and show on the Salesforce UI, right? So that time we develop the screen using one of this, and when user click on something on the page, this logic will execute. And from this logic, instead of reading the data or saving the data from Salesforce database, integration means it will try to interact with the other technology database, not within the Salesforce, right? So from this logic, there is a need to look into this database, right? They need the data from here, right? So, but directly it's not possible to query. So what it will do here in SAP, they provide some generic API. API integration means about API and full details we'll discuss when we start with the topic. Okay, so API means some generic format where any other class, other cross platform also can understand. Okay, so from here they expose in such a way where Salesforce can understand, right? So here it will try to interact with this. So they will pull that data from here. It will look into this. So whatever the data is there, it will return again back, right? From here again, it will go back to from here. Again, it will go back here, and finally that will be going back to here, right? So like that, I mean, I think something I deleted. Okay, so basically that is what so from here it will go here, and again whatever response is there, it will go back here and show. Okay, I mean that's what will happen. So when there is a need to look into the other platform database, that's where we deal with the integration. That's why people also ask, do you explain integration? Yeah, we discuss integration. That is the key thing. So we also understand that. Okay, the major concepts, the UI development, business logic using Apex. We also need to know, right? As part of the business logic integration, also we discuss. We also need to know the database queries, how we query, how we insert or update or delete data into database. So those also we should know, right? So for database, for the database layer, so in Salesforce we use SOQL. Okay, SOQL means Salesforce Object Query Language, Salesforce Object Search Language. DML means Data Manipulation Language. When we start with that topic, we'll discuss more on that. I'm just giving the high-level picture. Okay, as part of the Salesforce development, so all these things we are going to discuss. That's the high-level picture, right? This development is for discussing all these things. At the end of the day, after doing all these things, we need to do the deployment, right? So already we discussed, we don't work in directly the production. So we have Dev sandbox. From that, we move to QA, right? All these things we discussed in the admin training, right? UAT sandbox, and finally it will be moved to production. So how we move from one sandbox to other sandbox, we need deployment. Yeah, that's the one of the concept that also we deal as part of this. Yeah, this is what we discuss as part of this training. Again, I am saying the admin, knowing admin basics is recommended. I don't think that only without knowing admin, only if you learn development, you cannot survive like that. Okay, so you should know Salesforce admin. On top of that, you should know the Salesforce develop. Okay, so before we start with the basics, right? For all these things, the key thing is the Apex, the programming. So we should be very good with the programming concepts. Then, right, that is the bridge between the database and the UI, right? The database can be the database within the Salesforce or maybe external, right? So how it will pull, that is integration. So we first start with this Apex programming language. So what is that Apex programming language? So maybe some of you, if you don't know about the programming, first time if you are dealing with the programming, so how we understand what is the program, what exactly we see as part of the program, and all the basics. And after that, slowly we understand the in-depth concepts and also understand database commands, understand UI development, and complete the development concepts. Okay, so before I start with the Apex, so any questions, anyone so far? So based on what we discuss, any questions?
Srinu,
Yeah,
yeah, can you explain this deployment?
at the end we discuss about deployment, right? Deployment is
Okay,
nothing but, so whatever we configure, whatever we develop, right? We work in one of the sandbox, right? So whatever we configure, whatever we develop, we need to move those development into the other sandbox, right? Finally to the production, right? How we move that? So there are some tools to deploy. So we understand about those deployment tools as part of the deployment. Okay.
okay,
Yeah. So this is the high level picture. So now let's start with Apex, the programming language. So So far, if you have any questions, you can ask. Okay, so now this Apex is a programming language, right? So first of all, what is the program? So maybe some of you might be from civil, mechanical, and different backgrounds. You say, let's say you don't know about what is a program, how it look like, and all those kind of things, right? So for that, so just understand, right? Let's say you speak some language. If you want to learn some new language, right, which you don't speak and you want to learn something, some other language, right? Let's say English. Maybe that is not the mother tongue for most of the people. So we learn. So when we start learning English language, how we start? Same way this programming also. You can compare and you can understand few things. Okay, so let's say I'm comparing this programming. When you write any program, so how we compare with English language, and slightly there is a difference with the terminology, right? So after that we see what exactly we do. Okay, the first step to learn English. So we should know about some of the words, right? So hi, hello, or maybe how are you, right? So what is the meaning of how, right? So all those things we know. I mean, we need to learn first, right? So the English, the words in the English language. So once you know that, then we need to form the sentence, right? So to form the sentence by combining these words, right? So how it is having some meaning. You is having some meaning. R means it's nothing. There's no meaning, right? So some grammar. So once you know the grammar, so then you can in a meaningful way, you can form the sentence and start writing the sentences in English language, right? So we follow the grammar. While combining those words, we need to follow the rules of that language and form the sentence, right? So in the same way, so while dealing with the program, right? So just to understand, program is like one paragraph. So what we write in English, right? So to start with this programming language, first we should know about the tokens. A token is like the word, right? Maybe in English, each and every word we say word. Here we say as token. Yeah, again, the words can be noun, adjective, verb, pronoun. We have many things, right? So verb means is, are, all those kind of things, right? So there are different types of words. In the same way, when we deal with the programming language, each and everything what we see is a token, but the token can be a keyword or identifier, operator, like that. So when we call as keyword, when we call as operator, when we start writing the program, that time I will show you so that you can understand. Okay, so now the thing is, here in program also, we write statements. Instead of sentence, here we say statement, right? Statement is like a sentence in English language. But to form the statement, maybe in English we follow the grammar. In programming, right, in a technical programming languages, we call that as syntax, right? Syntax is like a grammar for English, how the rules. The same way, syntax is the rules specific to the language what we are going to learn. Okay, so one statement will be formed here, and also multiple sentences will become a paragraph, right? So when you write the paragraph in English, it's not like if you the sentences should be in a proper order. If you don't keep the sentences in a proper order, it won't give the proper meaning, right? In the same way, program, right? So here program also set up statements, but the statement should be in a proper order. So here we call as flow, right? So maybe here sequence of sentences in a proper order. So that we here we call as flow. First, which statement should execute, next to which statement should execute. It should have a proper sequence, then only the program will give the proper result. Similar to how the paragraph without proper order we cannot understand. The same way here we have to follow the sequence for the statements. So that's the program. So that is how, right? If you by comparing just a little bit terminology. So maybe here instead of word we say token, instead of grammar we say syntax. Here we say sentence, and here we say statement. Here maybe paragraph is like a program. We can write multiple programs, like how we write multiple paragraphs and right. So maybe you are writing a letter or you are writing a book or whatever. We write multiple paragraphs and have that content in a meaningful way. In the same way, when you are developing something, we write multiple programs. One program might call other program, and it will finally work for a particular feature what we develop, right? The functionality what we develop. So it's like that. Just understand. I'm going to start writing the program so that exactly you'll understand. So what is that keyword identifier? All those things in that process. Okay. So maybe in English, right? When you are writing a paragraph, right? How we separate each and every sentence? We use full stop, right? Full stop, one more sentence. Full stop, one more sentence. Maybe in the programming languages we use semicolon, right? Instead of full stop, we use semicolon. Like that, slight differences will be there. Okay. So slowly we'll understand, right? Even if you take sentences in English, right? There are different types of sentences. Let's say you want to combine multiple sentences, right? So what we use and are, right? Maybe between the sentences we use because, something like that, right? The same way here we have few things. All those things we are going to understand, right? So first, I want to show you how we write the statements in a program. In the process of writing those statements, I'll explain what are these tokens and different types. And slowly by combining those statements, how we form the program, all those things we are going to discuss. Okay, before we are understanding that, this language, right? This programming language, the first thing when we start learning any programming language is it is case sensitive or case insensitive. Okay, so Apex, right? Apex is case insensitive, right? Meaning it won't bother about the cases. For example, if I write something like this, right? Maybe in some other place, if you try to refer like this or try to use like this, okay? So all these things, it think that everything is same. Right? This is same, this is same. Even though there is a difference with the capital letters and these things, it recognizes all these things as same. So that is case insensitive behavior. But one of the famous language Java, right? Java, .NET. Those are case sensitive. That may be in .NET, Java. So this is different and this is different. The third one, that is also different. Right, like that. All those are different things. Okay. So just so understand that. Okay. So that's the first thing we need to know. Now the next thing what we need to know, the types of statements. What are the different types of statements we deal while writing the program? Okay, in that process we understand many basics. Okay, so like in English, right? So we say compound statements. So we combine multiple statements with and, right? So in the same way here, different category of statements. So the purpose why we write that statement. So different statements for different purpose we use. I'm classifying those statements. What are those different types? Okay, so the first thing, memory statements. Okay, so memory, I'll explain. First, let me list out all these types and I'll explain all these things one after other. The memory statements. So the next thing, arithmetic and the logical statements. The next thing, conditional statements. Right. The next thing, controlling statements. The next thing, input or output statements. Okay, these are the different types of statements I'll explain. So what is that memory statement and arithmetic, all those things one after other. So first we need to know this. So memory statement. So what is this memory statement? So why we need this one, right? So just let's say English, right? You need to write something, right? So if you want to write, so what we need, you need one paper or you need a book where you can write, or you need some, right, some place, right? If you are writing on a board, that is one, right? We need some place where we can write, right? So it needs some place memory to, the physical things are like papers and board and all those things, but within the computer, so that is like a memory, right? So on day to day, let's say on day to day, so all of us we are using laptop or some desktop computer. So how you store your documents or videos or images or whatever, all these things will be saved into the computer memory, right? So let's say I have 1 terabyte memory. So in that memory, all these documents, whatever we store, save, right? So that this memory is not that one, right? Equivalent to that one is, so when we say this database, finally all this database it stores in a computer memory, right? So maybe if the computer is having thousands of terabytes of memory, we call that as a server. Server is like a supercomputer. So when we work with Salesforce platform, they store all these things in their Salesforce server. It's like a big, maybe they maintain a room where they have huge hardware. There it stores, right? So this memory is not that one. This is like, you know about RAM, right? When you want to buy any laptop, right? So what we see, so I want 1 terabyte or 2 terabyte memory. One more, what is the next requirement? RAM, right? Random access memory, RAM. 8 GB RAM or 16 GB RAM, 32 GB RAM. Same thing for mobile also, right? So when you buy the mobile, let's say 256 GB, right? You are buying iPhone and so the memory 256 GB. That much videos, photos, or whatever you can save. But also your phone contains RAM, right? So that, so the what is the purpose of the RAM? So my system is having 3 GB RAM. Maybe nowadays latest laptop 8 GB, 16 GB RAM, right? The purpose of the RAM is when you open any application, right? So in my computer, I open this one, this VS Code, one of the tool. I opened GoToMeeting. I opened Chrome browser. I keep on open different websites within this browser. Let's say I open 100 websites within the same browser. When you open something, right? So this occupy all these things to see those websites and temporarily to hold all these applications, whatever we are running. All these things take the memory from the RAM, right? If you close this or if you shut down, all these things will be closed again. You need to open and work. So like that. So the memory is when your program started executing, right? So it's like if you close this browser, it releases that memory, right? So when this Chrome browser occupy the memory from the RAM, when you open this browser, if you close this, it won't occupy any memory from the RAM, right? In the same way, when our program, when you write the program, when the program started executing, at the time of executing, how much memory it needs to allocate. So those things we decide here, right? It's not like everything occupies same memory, right? This browser, whatever I opened, the amount of memory what it occupy from the RAM is different when compared to this tool, whatever I'm using, Visual Studio Code. The amount of memory needed to run this one is different, right? Based on different application, the memory to run that application is different. In the same way, that when we deal with the program, when program started executing, and the purpose of writing any program is to apply some logic on the data, right? Let's say calculator, right? Why we use calculator? You enter multiple numbers and either you add or subtract or multiply or divide, or you do the combination of different operations. Ultimately, it should give the result based on how we are giving the instructions. In the same way here also, right? The purpose of writing any program is it executes some logic without thinking from our side. The program will apply the logic and give the result as per the requirement, right? So while dealing with the data, to hold the data, it needs memory. How much memory? Based on the type of data what we deal, right? So maybe the number needs different memory. The text needs different memory. Date, true or false. There are different categories. Different types of data needs different memory. Okay, so those instructions we give using this memory statement. Okay, so how we say which type needs which memory, right? So yeah, it's like this, right? Which type, so that we have to instruct. Okay, so as per the programming languages, right? Now whatever I am going to list is as per Apex programming language. Maybe other programming language might have different types. So we have a concept called data type, which decides how much memory should be allocated by the system to hold the data whatever we enter. Okay, so we need to know about that concept, data types, right? The purpose of this is to make the system understand which data we are dealing, number or string or date or whatever we deal by mentioning this one. Okay, first let me list out these types, and after that I'll write a memory statement and I'll show you how exactly it works. Okay, so before listing out these things, so any questions on understanding this? So what is the purpose of writing the memory statement, right? So memory here, memory is only at the time of running the program. It's like a plan, right? So at the time of running, so how much so memory it needs. So that we is decided here. If the program is not running, it won't consume any memory, right? So it's like that. Okay, so let's say it's like, so you have the car and you can fill the petrol, right? So what is the capacity of your car? How many liters of petrol you can fill? Let's say 30 liters. That's the capacity, right? So after filling 30 liters, right? So again, if you want to fill, that will be consumed only when the car runs, right? So it's like that. The so maybe when we start after writing the program, I will show you exactly how it works. Okay, so Salesforce also at the time of running the program, there is a maximum capacity, like our RAM, right? Let's say if you say 6 GB RAM, only that much application you can open, which occupy only that much memory. So let's say nowadays there are some latest games. If you want to play a game, right? They say it requires 32 GB to play one of the game, but my system is having only 16 GB. I cannot play that game. As soon as I try to open that game, my system will hang because my RAM is only 16 GB. But that game needs 32 GB runtime memory to run that. Just like that, some limits are there. So we'll see those things. But so memory is that memory here. Okay, let me list out the types, and when I write the program and execute after that, you will understand more. So here we have, so one of the type based on alphabetical order I am listing here. So we have one of the type called blob. Okay, when we mention when you are trying to allocate memory using blob type, so which type of data we can store here? The files, right? It's like attachments, images, or whatever, right? So it can be Excel file or Word file or images or anything. So if you want to hold some file information, attachments kind of thing, so that time we go with the blob. Okay, the full form of the blob is binary large object. The image or the Word document or Excel or whatever system, it stores in the binary format. binary large object. Okay, so when you have a requirement to hold some file information, we go with the blob type. Okay, the other type is Boolean. So when you allocate the memory using this Boolean type, it holds either true or false, right? So when you see some checkbox, right, true or false. When you see such kind of web page, right, where you make it as true or false. So to deal with that scenario, this Boolean type is useful. Okay, so that is one thing. So the next thing, date. Date is one of the type. Okay, so it holds the date. So maybe date based on the country, based on the different factors, the format of the date will be different. So as per reverse, so first DD, YY, right? Maybe in India we follow like this, DD, YY. Or maybe based on country, the format might be different. So to maintain the date in this kind of format, while dealing with the date, we use this date format. Okay. So the next one is date time along with the date. So we can also maintain the time, maybe hours, minutes, right? So along with the date. So how many hours, how many minutes, how many seconds, how many milliseconds, right? So on. Those kind of things to hold that, right? I think until seconds it can hold date time. That's the type. Okay, so the next thing is decimal is one of the type. So whenever you have a requirement to deal with the numbers, so one of the type is decimal, right? So especially let's say you are dealing with the currency, right? So you are buying something, the price of that one is like $9.99, $5.6. You see like this, right? So while dealing with the currency, mostly you see the decimals also, right? After dot sum, that also gives the value in the final cost, right? So while dealing with those things, not only the rounded number, right? So we need some decimal digits, right? $5.6, something like that. So that time we use this decimal type. Okay, in some scenarios, we don't want these decimals. For example, we are counting 1, 2, 3. We don't say 1, 1.2, 1.3 like that, right? So that time there is a different type I'll list out. That is integer type. Going forward, we'll see that. Okay. So we also have double. Sometimes if it is a very huge number, right? Let's say you see something like very, very big number. You cannot read this, right? It's very difficult to understand and read it. Right? That time in mathematics, we have something like exponential and those kind of things, right? Something like you see is something like that. In that, when the number is very huge, so to make it short and give the value, system maintain the double. Beyond a certain limit, it stores the number in the double format. Okay, so mostly unless when you're dealing with the mathematics kind of very, very huge value, we don't use this much. Okay, but really if there is a need to hold that, a double is one of the type. That is also decimal, but a very large decimal value. So very large decimal. To hold that, we use double. Okay. The next thing, Okay, so just integer, before integer maybe ID as per alphabetical order. Okay, so in Salesforce we have the Salesforce record ID. So whenever we create the record, right, in the standard object or custom object, the uniqueness of the records will be maintained by Salesforce using the Salesforce record ID. The Salesforce record ID can be either 18 digit or 15 digit, right? To hold either 18 digit or 15 digit record ID, we use the ID data type. Okay. The next one is integer. Integer is one of the data type, mainly while counting, right? 1, 2, 3, 4. When you define the quantity, 100 quantity, 200 quantity. So that time we deal with the integer, right? So like this, without decimals. So that's about that. And the next one is long. Long is also the integer, but very large integer value. Very, very large number. When you are dealing, that time we deal with the long type. Okay. The next one is object. There might be some situations we don't know which type of data we store. We don't know either it is integer or it is a decimal. We don't know. So when you want to store some generic data, when you don't have a clarity, that time we go with this object type, right? Generic, it's generic to hold any type of data. So that's the object. In some situations, when we don't have the clarity which type of data we are dealing, we go with the object. Okay, the next one is the string. String is a text starting from single character to the big sentences. If you want to maintain that, we use this string type. Okay, so for example, I, single character, right? I can store. The rule is the text we have to enclose within the single quotes. Okay, make sure that single quotes, not the double quotes, right? Apex won't support like this. Okay, whatever text you give should be inside the single quote. It can be a single character, right? It can be a sentence. You can keep on type. Or whatever, you can keep on type and it can hold, right? So that's the string type. Okay. The next thing is the time. To hold the time, maybe, right, hours, minutes, seconds. So in those kind of situations, we go with the time. Yeah, these are the data types available. Okay. So using these data types while defining the statement to allocate the memory, we instruct the system how much memory it should allocate. Okay. So just to understand that one. Okay. Now let me write a statement, the memory statement, so that you can understand. So all we want to do, so we want to add two numbers and store that result of the number, right? So how to, when you enter a number, to hold that number in computer, it needs some memory while running that program, right? So how we instruct? So in the Apex program, so we say which type, and we are writing our first statement now. So I want two integer numbers, right? Integer means no decimal digits. right? Let's say we are adding two quantities, 100 and 150, and we need the result, right? So when you deal with the number, either go with the decimal or integer. Integer means the rounded. We don't need the decimal digits, right? If you have such kind of situation, so that time we go with the integer, right? We decide as a developer, right? Let's say you are dealing with a currency type of number. That time we need to go with the decimal because we need to, right, maintain the decimal digit also. So let's say we are just adding two numbers, some quantities, integer is the type. Okay, so the data type space, right? We need to give the space. And so what is the name of the memory, right? When you allocate the memory to hold some number, right, to that memory location to identify, right, going forward to refer to that memory, to point to that value what we entered into that memory, we need to give some name, right? So I'm just giving the name as number 1, right? So that's it. This is one of the statement. To say we are ending the statement, we have to use semicolon, right? Instead of full stop like in English, here we use semicolon, right? Maybe in English, if you want to write one more, right? Let's say I want to store number 2. Maybe in English we just say in the same line. Maybe here we use full stop, right? In general, in programming, we don't maintain in the same line. Each and every line, each and every statement, we write in a separate line to understand easily. So like that, there are some slight differences. This is a syntax, right? So data type, what is the name you want to give? This is the name. Whatever integer memory it allocates, for that we are giving this name. So that in our program, if we want to refer to this location, we say num1, so that the system will look into that memory. Whatever the value present in that, it will look into that. Okay. So when you are allocating the memory for the same type, right? So because this num2 is integer type, number 1 is also integer type, so no need to write 2 times. We can also, what we can do, you can say comma, right? So that means for integer type, we are allocating 2 memory locations. The first memory is this, second memory location to hold the integer values this. So like this we write. Okay. So just understand that. So in that memory, what will be there, right? So what is there in that memory? Nothing, right? Just you allocate it. System allocate place. So which number you want to keep inside that memory is as per our requirement, right? So let's say as a default, you want to, let's say I want to keep 100 here. We can also do that, right? Along with allocating, while allocating memory, as a default, we are assigning 100. For this, as a default, I am assigning 200. Right? That means when the memory is allocated, as a default, it will keep 100. As a default, for this, it keep 200. Later, if you want to replace, we can replace. Right? It's like a box, right? So let's say you have the laptop. When you buy the laptop comes with a box, right? So this memory is like that box. By default, your laptop is there. Remove that. You have some other laptop, you can keep, right, as soon as it fits into the same. So it's like that. Okay, so this is our first statement. And so any questions so far understanding this one? I mean, any, especially non-technical?
I have a question.
Yeah.
So in data types, you have two data types, that is object and blob, right? So if we write any, I mean, like any value in object, I mean, can we include blob in the object? Does object hold large files?
Yeah, it can accept any type. Any type.
So object holds files, but does it have any limit?
Limit in the sense, you can hold only
Uh,
one file. Right, all these types are like,
it can hold only.
yeah, if you want to hold multiple, we have a concept called collections. Okay, so as part of that, so we can accept. When I say num1, right, I'm allocating memory, it can hold only one number, right? I cannot keep 100, 200, 300 at a time into that. It is having the capacity to hold only one. If you want multiple, we have a concept called collections. We have list, set, map. So we need to define those things. So that we'll discuss little later. Okay. Now all these things holds only one value at a time. Okay. Yeah. So I think I want to give this next 10 minutes for the questions. So later I have some work today, sharp 10. So tomorrow we deal with the other types of statements and how we exactly work. So now the questions. Any question? Just you can ask.
Yeah, Shrinu, blob means it will store CSV and Excel, those kind of files.
Any file, any type of file.
Okay.
Okay. Yeah.
Okay. By storing this directly, they will open in Salesforce only, right?
Sorry.
Suppose I
I
have
mean,
a data type
see,
and I
all
have stored
the,
a.
all these things stores only when the program is running. Right. Once after running the program, nothing will be there here. Right. So it's like you enter a form here, right? So let's say you are clicking on here, right? So let's say a year started. I'm giving some number, something like this, right? Save, right? So whatever I entered here, when the program start running, right? This might be mapped to one of the variable, right? So only when that code is executing, that time it hold, right? Maybe this, it is saved into database, right? Somewhere maybe we have this database layer, that logic execute and save into database, then execution is done. That's it, right? Once the execution is done, everything will be released, right? All these things are not for permanent things, right? Only at the time of executing that program in the background. So only for that particular period of time when the program is running. So how it hold, right? For that purpose only, we write these things. If the program is not executing, nothing will be there, right? Did you understand? This is
Yeah.
not like a database. Database is permanent, right? But all these things are temporary, right? You open browser, right? You open different websites. So when you shut down, and again, if you open browser, again you need to open, right? But if you save this space in your memory, in your laptop, in one of the drive, you can go there and open, and that content you see, right? So this is only at the time of running the program. If the program is not running, there's no use of this. Okay.
Yeah, that time data type also, that is not a fixed. That is different time formats is there. Or, you mentioned.
There is a specific based on the time zone and all. So there are different formats maintained by Salesforce. Those, okay, to understand easily, I just I mentioned like this. Okay. Yeah.
Shrinu, where
Yeah.
can we execute Apex program?
I'll show you. So we need some time to write few statements, and I'll show you. In our next session, we'll see where to execute and all those kind of things. Okay. Slowly we'll start and understand clearly. So now my question, right? Whatever we discussed, so are you able to understand? Maybe if you are from non-technical,
Yeah.
any confusion with what is memory and all these kind of things, let me know. Okay. So maybe tomorrow we'll continue and understand all these types, and there are few more things. We'll also see where we execute and see from day one each and everything whatever we are writing. Okay.
Okay. Yes, Renu,
Yeah.
where can I
Yeah.
go and see this recorded video?
I'll send email.
Okay. Okay, sir. Thank you.
Yeah. So I think you should register in
Yes,
the link
already I
whatever I
registered.
distributed. Yeah. Then you will also get this recording to your email. Okay. But you will get by tomorrow. Okay. So for us already it
Okay.
is late night. So tomorrow by afternoon I'll send. It's like that.
Okay. Okay, sir. Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah. Any questions before ending? So also we have these documents and all, everything I'll share, the notes and everything I'll send as email. You can check email. Make sure to check the spam folder. Okay. So my mail might go to the spam folder. Check the spam folder. And okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
Srinu,
Yeah. Yeah.
as like C, C++, over here Apex, it don't have any kind of data type like float, character, because see, double decimal, double then strings, they are also there in as a advanced data type. But over here as like float, character, it don't have such kind of data type.
No. So character and big string or any text is string here. Okay.
Okay, it comes under string.
String. Okay. So
Okay,
any float is like a decimal digits kind of thing, right? That falls under this decimal.
okay,
The rounded number is integer.
okay.
Okay.
Okay, that means all the data types it comes under memory statement.
Yeah. These are the data types. Okay. So
Okay,
we have few more types. I'll explain tomorrow. Again, if I
Oh,
explain now, it will confuse you. Okay?
Okay. Okay.
Srinu,
Yeah.
yeah, you will be also covering like tools like deployment tools, Jira, and like that.
See, Jira and all those things are the project management tools. That is nothing to do with Salesforce, right? But as part of the administration training, I told right Jira and Rally, right? Company to company, what they use is different. Okay? So if you want to explore on that kind of part, okay, so there is one thing which is free. Um, okay, this is a website, but not exactly in the same way Jira looks, in a similar way, right? So you can sign up with your Gmail account. So here you see options to create the project in the company, right? When you work for a Salesforce project, right? Maybe there might be many Salesforce projects. Let's say you are working for Coca-Cola client, right? So they create a project and related to that project, whatever the requirements are there, everything they maintain under that project, right? So they maintain backlog means it's not assigned to anyone. So all those kind of things to manage, this is the one. So I think already I explained as part of the administration training, right, how that flow works. So tool wise, if you want to explore, this is free one. You can explore here. Jira and all, it is paid one, right? I cannot show with the company thing. Company is like a different VPN, different. I cannot bring those things here. Okay.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah. So maybe any other questions? Okay, I have some work today by 10. So tomorrow we'll continue with this, and so tomorrow we have like we discuss more statements and we'll discuss more.
Okay, sir.
Yeah. Okay, we'll continue tomorrow. Thank you.